One of my favorite examples of this is we find even in common Judaism today. And that is, there is a Old Testament law that says that you're not to boil a kid, a baby sheep, goat, in the milk of its mother. Now, there's some obvious ethical reasons for that and some other things, but that's the law. But in order to build a hedge and a fence around so that you never violate that law, today the Jews will not eat a cheeseburger because cheese is made of milk and hamburger is made of a cow, not a sheep. So that you can never, and in case you don't like cheeseburgers, you can never eat a hamburger with a shake. So most Americans would violate that law all over the place because we love to have our shakes and our hamburgers and our cheeseburgers. But that's how guarded the Pharisees would be. And in your Bible, mine says lawyers, yours probably says scribes. It's the same thing. It's the ones who write about the law, who interpret the law, and that's what they do. And the term woe means grief or misery. And so generally speaking, you would think that Jesus would want to compliment people who are religious, who are trying to do over and above what the law required so that they could be good little boys. Notice I didn't say good little boys and girls because you couldn't be a girl and be a Pharisee. So to be good little boys. But Jesus is going to take an entirely different tact with the Pharisaical group. And in verse 37 he says this, "And now when he had spoken, he being Jesus, a Pharisee asked him to have lunch with him." Now, I find this interesting because Jesus has not made himself all that friendly to Pharisees. He's been preaching against the Pharisaical types of ideas. They've been opposed to him just earlier in this chapter. They accused him of his exercising his authority based on Satan. And there's this constant enmity between the two. So you would think Jesus would say, well, you don't really like me and I've been preaching against you, so we'll take a rain check on lunch. Jesus accepts the invitation. So he asked him to have lunch, and he went in and reclined at the table, and that's again how they would eat in the first century. The Jewish custom was they wouldn't sit at a table, that they would have a lower table, and that they would lean on an arm, and then they would eat. And usually they would, depending upon how close you might be to the people, like in the last Passover, they were fairly close. The picture that we all are aware of the Last Supper that was painted, they weren't sitting at a table, they were reclining. That was their custom. And so they were reclining at this table. And when the Pharisee saw it, he was surprised that he had not first ceremonially washed before the meal. Now, this ceremony isn't about hygiene. It isn't about making sure the dirt's off your hands. You know how we teach our children, you need to wash before dinner and all that. It's not about the hygiene. This is all about ceremony. It was about taking this time and taking your hands were probably already clean, but then you would dip them and then you would wash them and then you would take this white linen towel and then you would dry it. And there was this whole ceremony over washing of your hands to show that you were an observant Jew, that you took everything seriously. But Jesus didn't do this. He didn't ceremonially wash before the meal. But the Lord said to him, "Now you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but inside of you are full of robbery and wickedness." You're not going to win a lot of friends by saying this. But Jesus says, look, in your ceremony, you're so concerned about washing, but inside there's robbery and wickedness. Now these guys who everybody thought were holy, Jesus is saying, you're full of wickedness and robbery. You foolish ones, did not he who made the outside make the inside also? Jesus is saying, you take a cup. Now which is more important if you're going to drink from this cup? washing the outside or washing the inside? So I want you to kind of think of a really dirty cup. And by that I don't mean coffee stains, I mean like dirt inside a cup. And you're going to drink your favorite drink. For some of you, maybe coffee. For some of you, maybe water. For some of you, maybe tea. For some of you, I'll just leave out what it may be that you prefer. But when you pour it into the cup, guess what happens to that drink? It becomes dirty. And you really don't want to drink it because it's one, it's dirty. Two, it's going to ruin the flavor of whatever you placed in the cup. But he's telling these Pharisees, you are so concerned about washing the outside that you've forgotten washing the inside. And between the two, which is more important? But give that which is within as charity, and then all things are clean for you. He's going, when you clean the inside, then you'll be truly clean. But you are more concerned about the outward appearance than what's truly taking place inside. And he's saying inside should be charity. And this term charity means love pretty much in action. Most of us, when we talk about and we think about to love our neighbors as ourselves and do all those things, we think about having warm, fuzzy feelings. And that's not what biblical love is all about. Biblical love is I see a need and I take care of that need for you. So Jesus is saying, but give which is within as love in action, as charity. Then you'll be clean. But then he adds another woe. But woe to you, Pharisees, for you pay tithe of mint and rue and every kind of garden herb, and yet disregard justice and the love of God. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others. Jesus is saying, you are so concerned about the law that you even go beyond the prescriptions of law and say, even when it comes to mint, these little leaves, we're going to give 10% of those little leaves to God. We're going to give 10% of the little rue, which is a herb, which the seasoning will give that. And Jesus saying, you're so concerned about that, but you've neglected and disregarded justice, making sure that everyone is treated equally and properly. And the love of God. Notice he's saying, you are so concerned about the outside that you've forgotten what the whole law is about, the love of God. As Jesus has explained, you can fulfill the entire law by following two commands. Love the Lord with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. They've forgotten that one. And to love your neighbor as yourself, and they've forgotten that one. You see, they are and were hypocrites. And no one likes a hypocrite. You don't like a hypocrite. I don't like a hypocrite. God doesn't like a hypocrite. But before you start feeling too bad, guess what? We're pretty much all hypocrites. Now, so that you might understand what the true meaning of a hypocrite is, we generally think, well, it's somebody who says something and does something else. But a true hypocrite is an actor, a pretender. And so my sermon illustration is this, which I will call plant. Now, it's not really a plant. It's made of plastic. But it's pretending to be a green plant. It's a hypocrite. It's acting as something that it is not. And the Pharisees were acting as if they were holier than thou. And the problem with many churchgoers and many religious people is that we always act like we're holier than thou. That we're more concerned about how we act than who we are. So we make all these rules. We shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that. Fortunately, our church has fewer rules than a lot, but there are denominations that it's a sin to play cards. Why? Because It may look like you're part of that whole group that doesn't. It's a sin to go to the movies. It's a sin to do all these things. And they're more concerned about how you act than what's on the inside. Because quite frankly, I can judge you by how you act. I can't judge you on what's the inside. But God can. So, to avoid being a hypocrite, number one, we should stop acting. Number two, we should stop worrying about what is the outward appearance, that we seem really holy, that we seem really religious, that I go to church every time the door is open, and I don't do all the things that we're told not to do, and I do all the things that we're told to do, and I make up a good show. But then when I come home, my kids have no clue that I'm actually a disciple. And one of the greatest harms we do to our children is we act one way in church and another way at home. Because then at home they determine what you do at church really doesn't matter. It is all an act. You're all a hypocrite. And I have nothing to do with it. So as soon as I grow up and leave the house, I'm not going back to church because all there is hypocrites anyway. And you may not know a child like that, but you know somebody who's been in church who has said those very words. There's nothing but hypocrites there. My response to that is, a hospital is full of sick people. You don't go to the hospital because you're well. We go to church because we understand that we are sinners, saved by grace. And we Baptists can become hypocrites very, very quickly if we forget that we are saved by grace and then try to impress God by what we do as opposed to who we are. So, be more concerned on what's the inside. Make sure that it is clean. Make sure that it is following God's command. But notice, Jesus didn't say it's unimportant to follow, quote unquote, the law. He said you shouldn't neglect it, but you should do it in addition to being who God has called you to be. Now, fortunately, the law does not tell us, because I'm a Gentile, that I have to not boil a kid in its mother's milk. But Jesus has given me some commands to love you, His people, as He loved His people and gave Himself for them. He didn't give that as an option to me. He gave that as a command to me. I should be more concerned about the fact that He has saved me by grace, and when I try to add anything to that, I am a hypocrite because I am not doing what I say I believe. So He first condemns them because they're hypocrites. And then in verse 43 He says, "Woe, misery, grief to you Pharisees, for you love the chief seats in the synagogues and the respectful greetings in the marketplace." He's going, you want the special seats in the temple and in the synagogues, and you want people to know that you are special because of where you sit. Now, in a Baptist church, the special seating place is in the back, because that's the place that always gets filled first. And so, the special place for Baptists are in the back. I remember there was one of our members many years ago said, when you go to a play or you go to a musical or you go to a concert, you'll pay extra for orchestra seats and you'll pay extra for being close and in the center of the happening because you want to see everything and you want to hear everything. And that's just a play or a musical or whatever. It may be your favorite artist, cool. But your eternal destiny doesn't matter how U2 plays. but nobody ever wants to sit close. But they were being, again, the deal was, number one, pride. Because I get to sit in a seat of honor. And people say, whoa, there's the guy. He's a Pharisee. He's holier than me. I should be like him. And Jesus is saying, you want all that? You want the respectful greetings? You want to sit in the chief seats? Woe to you, for you are like concealed tombs, and the people who walk over them are unaware of it. Now, what is Jesus saying? In their culture, if you touched a body, you were unclean. If you walked on a tomb, you were unclean. Jesus is saying, just by the fact that these people are coming in contact with you are making them unclean. You think you're holy. You think you're special. You think that everybody should be like you. And in reality, when they come in contact with you, instead of making them holy, you're making them unclean. Pride goes before the fall. So he rips on the Pharisees. Verse 45, and one of the lawyers, one of the scribes, one of the religious lawyers who was there with them said to him in reply, teacher, which I find interesting, rabbi, rather than, hey, Jesus. He's acknowledging that he's a teacher. He's acknowledging he's a rabbi. But he doesn't like what he has to say. But he said, teacher, when you say this, you insult us too. Well, maybe sometimes it's unfair to judge you by the company you keep, but sometimes the company you keep tells you exactly who you are. And the lawyers are keeping company and assisting the Pharisees. But he said, oh, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. No, that's not what he said. But he said, woe to you lawyers as well. Now, I'm a lawyer. There is one passage where Jesus does have something to say nice about a lawyer, but that's not about this message today. But he's ripping on us right now, the religious lawyers, not the Philadelphia ones. But he said, woe to you lawyers as well, for you weigh down men with burdens hard to bear, while you yourselves will not even touch the burdens with one of your fingers. He's saying, as a part of your rulings, as a part of your discussion, as a part of your teaching upon what the Pharisees do, you keep adding extra and extra requirements over and above. There was already 630 laws in the Old Testament to begin with, but they added more, and they added more, and they added more, to the point that you just couldn't keep them. And the lawyers, instead of just adding to it, they didn't help the people follow them. They wouldn't even touch it. Here are all the requirements. See, you're a bad person. You're not holy like us because you don't see us at home. All you see us is in the chief seats and in the marketplace when we walk around all holy and good and smart. But you don't help anyone follow the law. You don't help people to understand, as Paul later will say, the law was never there to make you good. The law was there to tell you how bad you are. The law was there to teach us that we needed the grace of God and that His infinite mercy was there for us. That it was a school teacher, not a burden maker, but a teacher. And these lawyers were so wrapped up in the law that they didn't see what the purpose of it was. It was just to weigh people down. Woe to you, for you build the tombs of the prophets, and it was your fathers who killed them. So you are witnesses and approve the deeds of your fathers, because it was they who killed them, and you build their tombs. Jesus is saying, you're exactly like your fathers. Oh, you may build a tomb to a prophet, which only there to say that you honor those who your fathers dishonored, not only by killing them, but by ignoring them. God sent His prophets for a reason, to warn his people that they needed to return back to him. But their rejection was so complete that rather than hearing the message of God, it was easier to just kill them. And so you honor them by building tombs, but you have not changed who you are. For this reason also the wisdom of God said, I will send to them prophets and apostles, and some of them you will kill, and some of them you will persecute, so that the blood of all the prophets shed since the foundations of the world may be charged against this generation, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar and the house of God. Yes, I tell you, it shall be charged against this generation. Jesus is saying, every prophet that was ever there, and have you ever thought of Abel being a prophet? Abel was killed because of his relationship with God. From Genesis until Zechariah, God's people, or people who claim to be God's people, killed the prophets. It has not been a one-time occurrence. It has gone throughout the entire Old Testament. But he's saying something even more significant. He's saying the blood that cried out on Abel's behalf may have cried against Cain, but it cries out even more against this very generation Jesus is living in. And every single prophet thereafter. Why? Because they're going to treat the prophet, the king, the Messiah, the Son of God, the exact same way. The one who is better than Solomon, the one who is better than Jonah, the one who is the Son of God, they are going to treat the very same way. And his apostles, they are also going to mistreat the very same way. 11 of the 12 will be murdered. One will live to be a ripe old age. But he was persecuted. Woe to you, lawyers, for you have taken away the key of knowledge. You yourselves did not enter, and you hindered those who were entering. He's saying, you're the ones who should be able to explain the law. You're the ones who should be able to assist people in keeping the law in such a way that God intended them to keep it, so that they might be clean inside, not just outside. That their cup may be clean internally and externally. But you prevented them from getting that information. And when they came close, you stopped them from there. Now, it's bad enough to be wrong. But how terrible is it to stop others from getting into the presence of God? And that is exactly what Jesus is accusing them of. So, when we handle the grace and gospel of Christ, we need to make sure that people understand it. That we're not roadblocks from them seeing the grace of God. That they might understand, yes, unfortunately there may be times that I may be a hypocrite. I try not to be. And yes, there may be times when I don't do what Jesus commanded me to do, to love you as he loved you. But it's not because he's wrong or not the Son of God. It's because I am weak and miserable. And even if I succeed, and even if I love you the way he loved you, and even if I love my enemy, and even if I love my neighbor as myself, and even if I do all that he has commanded me, my answer is not, I'm better than you. My answer is, I'm just a miserable servant, only doing what you told me to do. You see, there is no pride in our following Jesus. Because he gave us life. He gave us grace. He gave us instruction. And if I say that I am a follower, a disciple of his, then one doing just what he told me to do is not that significant. I'm just following what the Son of God told me to do. Now, with that warning, someone who has a soft heart would say, you know, Jesus, these words are really harsh. They cut me to the quick, and I repent and I am sorry. That's not their reaction. When he left there, the scribes and the Pharisees began to be very hostile and to question him closely on many subjects. To get more information? To be able to follow this rabbi? No. To catch him in something he might say. And you know, getting ahead of the story, they're not able to catch him in anything he says. As a matter of fact, they have to lie about what he said in order to condemn him. Because he said, tear this temple down in 3 days, and in 3 days it will rise again. And they said, he talked about the temple, which is blasphemy. They lied about what he taught. So they were not able to catch him as smart as they think they were. So when I preach this to you and 3 fingers are pointing back at me, the question is, what is my response? Oh, I'm perfect. I'm entitled to people to say, oh, he's the holy guy. Or do I say, what is really inside of me? God, cleanse me. There's a song that we used to sing many decades ago, fill my cup, Lord. Maybe we should sing first, clean my cup, Lord, and then fill it up. So that I might be a vessel of pure water to allow others to drink the grace of God. So that I might live a holy life, not because that makes me special, but because he's worthy of it. We are to be holy as he is holy. We are to be set apart as he is set apart. There should be no doubt what is the purpose of our life, to be pleasing to him. And people should not get misunderstanding by who we are, by what we set as our priority. And so when we take a look and we say, Lord, if and when I have been more concerned about what I look like than who I am, forgive me. Cleanse me. Help me to love you with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my strength. Help me to do justice. Help me to follow your commands. Because you are worthy. And to the best of my ability, that no one else might say, well, see, Jesus really isn't real, because if he was, he'd be different. That my life and my words might match. That I wouldn't be full of pride or hypocrisy, but full of love. And all God's people said.